Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is coming out this Thursday in literally just 2 days, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know it until I just started seeing reviews pop up this morning, and I was like, oh shoot, it's the week. It's probably one of the most underwhelming games probably of the year for me, but also a game that I'm very interested in revisiting, but so far from everything that I've seen, it's really just the same exact game, which never was anything super amazing on the 3DS. But of course, the official reviews are out, so we can actually talk about the game and talk about what people think and exactly what all the reviews have come up to. And that's my job here, is to take all the different reviews and put together a list of the negatives and the positives and kind of tell you what people are thinking overall and my kind of, thoughts before the game come out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Luigi's Mansion and Nintendo in general. And let's dive in to Luigi's Mansion 2. Luigi's Mansion 2 originally came out 11 years ago on the Nintendo 3DS. And after a very long wait period from the first game on the GameCube, we finally got the successor that we've been asking for, even though it wasn't exactly what we were expecting. Instead of having a giant mansion that you traversed pretty much at your own leisure, there are now multiple mansions for Luigi to explore, and you are now in a mission-based gameplay form, which means you're not just going around the mansion and solving puzzles and doing things whenever you want. You actually have to jump into individual missions thanks to EGAD, which definitely does change the pace that you might be used to. For a lot of people, this was the big drawback. It was still a really good game, but this mission structure definitely does change up how the game plays, and definitely isn't a great thing for a lot of people. I also am not a fan of that structure. This is also the game where we started to see the step away from the creepy, dark original form that it took on the GameCube, which a lot of people wanted it to return to, but of course it seems like it's pointing more in the direction of the quirky, goofy Luigi adventure that it is like it was in Luigi's Mansion 3. It's not a big deal, but I still would love to see that dark, gloomy Luigi's Mansion that we got on the GameCube all the way back then. Let's talk about all the positives that the reviewers have been talking about before we dive into the negatives. Luigi's Mansion 2 still has a lot of fun and goofy cinematic moments, which makes it very charming still to this day. There's also tons of collectibles to find, and I remember from the original version, it took me a very, very long time to find all the hidden crystals. If you played Luigi's Mansion 3, it's sort of the same deal, where there's a bunch of hidden collectibles based on each mission that you'll have to find, and if you thought they were very hard in 3, which they were, they're just as hard if not harder in Luigi's Mansion 2. There are also some really good puzzles in this game, and that is one thing that the original didn't really have a lot of, is really deep puzzles. It was more about just catching ghosts and finding ways to fight the portrait ghost. So I will say that addition in Luigi's Mansion 2 was a warm welcome, and obviously it led to some of the amazing puzzles that we got in Luigi's Mansion 3. So if you are a big fan of Luigi's Mansion 3, overall you're really probably going to still enjoy this game. It's going to feel slightly different thanks to the mission structure, but you're still going to have a blast going through it. I've also heard that the new control scheme is actually really good, because the Nintendo 3DS actually did not have a second stick, and you also couldn't even use that little having a second stick is really good and helps the game to control more like that of Luigi's Mansion 3, which once again is going to appeal to a larger audience that's probably only played that game in the series so far. And finally, one of the big positives is it's a pretty long game and it has some difficulty ramp up at the very end. I mean, if you're going for all the collectibles, I've heard that's going to take around 30 hours to complete everything, which is a pretty good chunk of time for what was originally a Nintendo 3DS title, which normally they don't last this long, so a 30-hour game experience to see everything is pretty good. Okay, this sounds like a pretty good Luigi's Mansion adventure, as there's not much else to talk about, as it's a one-to-one recreation pretty much of the original, which leads me into the negatives. So first off, one player can only play on the online mode locally now, meaning that you can't have a buddy in the same room with you play the Scare Scraper mode together. You can only play by yourself online, or if everybody else has their own copy of Luigi's Mansion 2, yeah, that does kind of suck, especially considering the fact that something like this literally already exists with Luigi's Mansion 3. It's a fun mode, and I heard it's another fun addition, but at the same time, it's just a weird change to only allow one player to jump online when you could have another buddy in the room with you playing online together. Of course, another negative that I kept hearing about is that mission structure, which once again is going to feel a lot different than the flowing nature of going from floor to floor from Luigi's Mansion 3, or just slowly fully exploring the entirety of the mansion from Luigi's Mansion 1. It's cool to have all these different mansions, but I wish we could just walk outside and move from each mansion to mansion in kind of a mini open world, rather than having a whole mission-based structure, which definitely did get kind of annoying, at least for me, of the original game. Another problem is there is no real additions. This is the exact same game from 11 years ago, and this is kind of bad when you consider the fact that it's a full-priced retail Switch game at $60. This is a perfect $40 game. This should not be $60, especially when you look at the quality, which is yet again another negative, where you don't even have to listen to reviews to just see that this game isn't the greatest looking in the series of Switch games that we've been seeing so far. I mean, Luigi's Mansion 3 is one of the best looking games on the console, and we've seen some really good ones too, like Metroid Prime Remaster, which is just strange to see another remaster on the Switch that looks worse than a game that just came out a couple of years ago in the same series. Like, Luigi's Mansion 3 is night and day different from this game. Most kids and casual players probably won't care and notice, but if you played this game's original, you'll notice that it looks pretty much like the same exact game, just with textures cleaned up a bit. But there's still some rough edges, and it's very noticeable. Especially when I saw some scenes of some of the mansions from the outside, they just looked all blocky and Play-Doh looking compared to something like Luigi's Mansion 3's amazing texture work. Sorry, but for $60, this game should definitely be remade from the ground up, at least to make these textures look a lot better. So this little baby remaster, I guess they did, to me just wasn't quite enough to make me super excited for the textures and for the new look. I guess it's technically still a remaster, but just barely. The second stick is an amazing addition, but for some reason Nintendo decided to make the X button the only way to look up, which is pretty weird, and I heard some of the reviews actually said it did kind of jar them for a little bit until they got used to it, and it still just made things wonky when it came to interacting with things, which is also the same button, and opening doors, which is also the same button. It's a weird choice for sure, and I don't know why they didn't just stick to the Luigi's Mansion 3 gameplay and the control scheme, but you know what, it is what it is. Another small complaint that I've seen from some of the reviews is that if you die in a mission, once again you have to restart from the very beginning, which to me was never a big issue because it's kind of hard to die in this game. I feel like the only time you'll actually really die is towards the very end of the game and with some of the last couple of boss battles. But yeah, it, to me wasn't a big issue, but I can definitely see this being annoying, especially if you're trying to collect everything in that mission, and dying at the very end of the mission and having to do it all over again can be pretty annoying because some of these missions can be kind of lengthy. One of the last things for the negatives is something that I definitely remember from the original, is it's a very slow-paced Luigi's Mansion game. You'll be spending a lot of time watching things play out and having to backtrack in order to find a key, or being interrupted by EGAD as he calls you over every little situation ever, or going in and out of missions and having to sit through long dialogue. Yeah, that is something that definitely halts the game a lot and makes it come to a crawl when you want to just hurry up and get the mission done and you could pretty much figure out what to do without the help of EGAD. Speaking of EGAD, the last negative that I heard was apparently GameSpot hates EGAD.
I really can't stand his design. This isn't the fault of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD specifically. He looks largely the same as he did in the original and in Luigi's Mansion 3, but it's just hard to look at a classic iconic design like Luigi or a Boo next to this obnoxiously ugly design, which looks like a mad scientist crossed with a baby. Nintendo seems unfortunately married to EGAD as the impetus of Luigi's ghostly adventures, but that character's look has aged terribly.
I can't even lie, as I was listening to this review, I had to pause the video and made sure I heard it right. Yeah, that's a strange complaint, but I guess some people don't like EGAD's design. I personally don't have a problem with it, but if you do, I guess he looks the same in this game. Sorry. But yes, all the reviews are in, and for the most part, it looks like this game has been getting lots of 7s out of 8s. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, GameSpot gave it a 7 out of 10, and Nintendo Life gave it an 8 out of 10. Here are the rest of the reviews that you can look at that other companies gave the game. So the highest is a 9 out of 10 from God is a Geek, but yeah, it's looking like an average game, and I think we all could have expected this and saw this coming a long time ago, like literally when the game was revealed. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know down below, are you excited for Luigi's Mansion 2 in a couple days? Will you be picking it up? And drop all your opinions down below. I'll be very interested to see what you guys have to say about it. But make sure to leave a like and subscribe before you head out, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.